Great American Adventure. Secrets of America: Political History, Government and Law. By Judge Dale, retired. Part 1A. Lesson in Fraud. Duetto and Historic Perversion and Expert Mind Programming. Libellators, Babylonian slave driving techniques, which has been adopted and employed by the United States government. Few citizens realize that America is not what they perceived it of. Elephants are gray, but not all gray things are elephants. This exposé pastor revealed to you the great adventure and some secrets of America, but not all, because there are too many, such as, America is not a free or constitutional country. Factually, it isn't even a country. America is a privately owned French corporation, and its motive of operation, known as politics, government, courts, laws, currency and commerce, are merely the byproducts of several greedy, vivid and intellectual imaginations belonging to the royal and elite of Europe, and controlled with the aid of their foreign agents and slave drivers who act in America under the protection of the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act. The success of this private corporation relies heavily upon the ability of its slave drivers, identified as the chiefs of staff, politicians, bankers, judges, priests and lawyers, to convince teachers, policemen, soldiers and the general public of its authenticity. To major problem sexist for this private corporation, because everything that the corporate board of directors, the European royal, elite and Sabbatian Jewish bankers decide is always recorded somewhere and is accessible with the advent of new technological advances. Even some of these files marked top secret are accessible with a little help from your friends. Ironically, the only secrets being concealed within those files is their treason, rogues history and new technological advances being withheld from public view. History is a fable agreed upon. Napoleon Bonaparte. Would it interest you to know that historically, every documented skirmish, global catastrophe and war that ever occurred on Earth since ancient Babylon has been a well-planned and staged event, orchestrated by the royal and elite classes of the world with a focus on mind, crowd, population control and the stimulation of commerce. After all, the European Board of Directors makes their money off commerce, and unfortunately wars and catastrophes generate more income and spending than tranquility and peace. Do they care that people might die? Like all sociopaths, they actually plan on it. What would be your first reaction, if I were to prove to you that 2 elected presidents of the United States were never American citizens and were elected under an alias or assumed name? The first man was a German national, Anathistand, former Nazis' naval officer and the former director of the Nazi intelligence agency called Odessa. The second man was a South African national and is a Marxist, RSist and anti-Christian. This is a disparaging fact to hear or read about, especially since colonial America was founded by Christian people seeking freedom from religious persecution. People who just wanted to be left alone, which made them an easy mark for unscrupulous men. Would it interest you to know that the first CIA agency for the United States was completely staffed with former Nazis and OSA officers, with the blessings of President Harry S. Truman and the United States Congress, and they placed World War II flying ACE, Wild Bill Donovan, in a figurehead position as director, in order to sell the CIA to the American public. Would it shock or even concern you to learn that the Patriot Act is a carbon copy of the Nazi Constitution of the 1940s? History suggests that the Allies defeated the Nazi war machine when in fact Churchill and Hitler were close friends and Masonic brothers. Queen Elizabeth called Adolf Hitler uncle, and Adolf's real name was Baron Rothschild, and he was a member of the European royal family. Didn't you ever wonder why the Queen's Royal Palace was never touched during the Nazi aerial bombing of England? 2 investigative journalists uncovered these facts, and when they attempted to expose Churchill and Elizabeth, they were arrested and imprisoned for 33 years without formal charges or trial. Shortly after the World War II German surrender, the government of the United States secretly repatriated 155,000 Nazis and OSA officers into the United States in 1945 under Operation Paperclip, and the average immigrant to America today is forced to suffer all kinds of hurdles, pitfalls, prejudices and propaganda to finally be accepted under U.S. immigration laws. Immigration laws that countermand the basic principles and guarantees of the Declaration of Independence. How would you feel about President George W. Bush if you knew that he sued 2 executive order SAS president, which one made all? Would it interest you to know that all but 4 us presidents and 98% of all of our us congressmen have been serving as political decoys on official slave drivers for the European royal and elite masters? The cost of campaigning for election to the office of presidenter for a seat in Congress has intentionally been made untouchable and exorbitant in cost, except for millionaires. The proposed intent is to discourage the average American citizen from overstepping his class boundaries in an attempt to secure one of these political posts. Theorize a huge disparity. Would it interest you to know that all but 4 us presidents and 98% of all of our us congressmen have been serving as political decoys on official slave drivers for the European royal and elite masters? The cost of campaigning for election to the office of presidenter for a seat in Congress has intentionally been made untouchable and exorbitant in cost, except for millionaires. The proposed intent is to discourage the average American citizen from overstepping his class boundaries in an attempt to secure one of these political posts. Theorize a huge disparaging class difference in America. Would you feel just a little bit ignorant to learn that the Republican non-Democratic Party is another political fraud and that these political parties are actually the product of one large political conspiracy? All of the candidates chosen for the highest positions in government are not chosen by party members or the public but are pre-selected by the royal and elite, and each approved candidate must swear an allegiance to and render a pledge to adhere to the demands of these corporate directors and masters. Your so-called right-to vote in America is actually about slave registration. Every applicant is asked if they are a United States citizen or other. A U.S. citizen is defined in all law dictionaries as a corporate entity. Your vote really means nothing during an election because the electronic voting machines are rigged. The manual tabulation process was eliminated via the Bush v. Gore elections is unreliable, and besides, the Electoral College actually chooses the candidates regardless of the vote count. This was the real reason behind the creation of the Electoral College. The whole Bush v. Gore event that occurred in Florida was a well-planned and staged event to eliminate the paper ballot cards and manual tabulation. The use of racist remarks and display sophism is also planned by the royal and elite to divert attention away from their true purpose. Racism is used heavily and well in America to divert the attention of the masses because most of us are very easily distracted. The real truth is that there is no difference between the masses butasa, collective group, Theslave drivers couldn't controluson soracismus used to, divide and conquer, the slaves. The federal government's uswal motive of operation is to cause a problem, blow it out of proportion in the media and then provide for an doctor meta that only they can control. This is never the exception, but rather the rule, and each time a little more of our humanity and liberty is subtly stolen by government without the public ever taking notice of it. Most people are easily entertained and distracted, which is the same reason why people are fascinated with magicians and hypnotists. America's judiciary are as Miller corporate branches-led courts. The judges are actually business administrators called judges, and all of America's laws are civil corporate regulations called statutes. People are treated as corporations in these courts, and these so-called bastions of justice are all about commerce and fraud. Everyone needs to be on the same page, and so precedents become their safety benchmark. This next question doesn't constitute any proof, but think about this. If American judges truly are the good guys, why don't they all wear white robes instead of black? Themes wear us, because black is a pagan traditional color for Illuminati priests, which will make more sense to you as you read on through this expose. The local police and prosecutors are not in place to serve and protect, the American public, but to the contrary, they are restructured to protect the slave drivers and the private United States corporation, by enforcing its corporate statutes against the corporate enemy, the American citizen. Most of the police officers shaven taklu about how they have been indoctrinated and manipulated. They are naive and well-meaning that they actually believe they are preserving and protecting the public. The politicians, prosecutors, judges, priests and clerks know the truth, and many of them increase their personal spoils with every conviction. Yes, the Vatican, judges, prosecutors and clerks make money off every conviction and lawsuit, and their clearinghouse for all of these private spoils is located in the Texas Federal Reserve, under an account titled, the Chris Fund. I-4 police officers would simply invest a little energy and time to research and read something other than PLAYBOYOR popular mechanic sorta hoist a few at the local police pub. They would discover that the amended version of the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1933, by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, specifically identifies the American citizen as the enemy of the federal government. The fraud and deception perpetrated by these slave drivers works well, as long as he can maintain their deception and manipulation over the masses. In fact and in reality, the historic civilian government promised by the Constitution of the United States of America never existed, nor did it ever have a chance of succeeding, courtesy of President George Washington and the Continental Congress. President George Washington, the reputed father of our country, cleverly overthrew the organic Constitution of the United States of America, using the Articles of Confederation, and then reinstated the privately owned colonial corporation of the Virginia colony. He then installed a military government, which is concealed in plain sight, e.g., Commander-in-Chief, Attorney General, Secretary General, Auditor General, Surgeon General, Postmaster General, etc. The Constitution was a well-written document, which was copied from the Iroquois Federation government. Many of the safeguards found in the organic Constitution were added by the Founding Fathers to bind the hands of the other delegates because one of them trusted each other, which proves the old proverb that there is no honor among thieves. I bet you never knew that the American Indians were governed by an emperor named Moito Yandanjoida Federation government. We were all falsely taught that the red race were just savages. The Iroquois Indians are the architects of the universal postal system of the world. And I bet you never knew that the red race of America are the only known living descendants of the continent of Atlantis, which sunk into the Atlantic Ocean around 9600 BC. The overthrow of the Constitution by President Washington was no real loss to America because the Constitution had actually been converted into a business plan, designed to benefit the Founding Fathers and not the American people. This information may not correspond with the material that was pounded into our brains during our forced public school education, but it is a fact nonetheless. America factually continued to operate under the privately owned corporation of the Virginia colony until March 9, 1933, and then that corporation was dissolved by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, upon the passage of the Emergency Banking Act, and at which time he instituted a new privately owned corporation called the United States, Inc., which is registered in France and recorded under the Vatican Corporation of Rome. Now isn't that a perplexing situation? The term, the United States of America, never got off the ground, and is a fictitious name fraudulently used by the masters and slaved rivers because it conforms to the same educational material that society has been indoctrinated with, and because it appeases the ears and minds of the patriotic public, but it is all just another corporate prevarication. America was guaranteed a public education but never guaranteed a truthful education, and as Shakespeare once wrote. And therein lies the rub. Factually, the concept or government institution known as the United States of America has not existed since the passage of the Declaration of Independence. However, the elite slave drivers have cleverly convinced the American public that this is all real by creating and celebrating national holidays, by erecting monuments, by adopting a national anthem and flag, by fictionalizing history, by propagating a false freedom, and by forcing this indoctrination upon society through mandatory public education. According to the Articles of Confederation, the phrase, "we the people," is defined to mean, "we the delegates," which refers only to the politicians and not the public, which proves again that, the Constitution of the United States of America, was never intended to protect or serve the American public. There are several early administrative court rulings, which confirm this same conclusion, for those of you who require something more than common sense and my educated Oppenheimer observations. Everything in America is about contract sanitizer burden as Americans to make government perform honorably, to be specific and to prohibit them from changing the meaning of common words, which is refer a toint their circle of friends as, legalese. The American B.A.R. Association is a foreign union and its members are all working in collusion with Israel, the British Empire, the Vatican, the Rothschild and Rockefeller banking empires, Congress and the elite to undermine America. All attorneys are agents of a foreign power who swear allegiance to that foreign power, i.e., the Queen of England. This is why all lawyers must file a written notice of appearance in every court case they represent. By that notice, the lawyer is admitting to the court that is a foreign agent and is requesting permission to present you in that corporate court. Your contract with the lawyer gives him your sovereign power of attorney, to present your best interests and immediately uses it against you by admitting to the judge that you will accept the jurisdiction and decisions of the corporate court. So much for winning your case or on appeal. When a prosecutor loses a trial, he is obligated by the court to pay the costs of prosecution, out of pocket. Your attorney always divulges your defense strategy to the prosecutor to avert this embarrassment and penalty from being assigned to him. This group is a brotherhood and these corporate courts are a business and everything is about commerce. People are regarded as nothing more than corporate property. The American B.A.R. Association is actually a branch of the National Lawyers Guild Communist Party, which can only be located in the hard copy printing of 28 U.S.C. 3002, Section 15A. The online version of Title 28 U.S. has been altered by the Attorney General to read something entirely different, apparently because this fact has recently shown up in too many private court petitions and memorandums of law. To become a member of the American B.A.R. Association, applicants must have obtained a doctorate in law or the equivalent thereof and passed an examination designed to test the depth of their indoctrination. If they pass, they are required to surrender their American citizenship and swear allegiance to the Queen of England and not the Constitution. This means that all card-carrying American lawyers are foreign agents, liars, traitors and communists. Now under Jesus warned us about lawyers. The privately owned corporate Federal Reserve System's debt has cleverly been renamed the national debt, to suggest that this is the American public debt. However, it is not America's debt but rather Israel's debt and the private Federal Reserve S corporate debt and we have been deceived into thinking and believing the complete opposite by the corporate slave drivers' throat-hair use of patriotic slogans like, "This is the cost of freedom." If you want more proof, examine the fine print of your savings or checking account contract. You will discover that each time you opened one of these accounts, you agree to be responsible for the repayment of the national debt. Now why would that language ever be included in an application for a checking or savings account if the national debt already was our responsibility? Themes whereas, so that the banks may confiscate your assets without further permission. Pretty clever on their part, if do say so. Would it interest you to know that the FCC, CIA, FBI, IMF, NSA, IRS, OPM, ATF, DIA, NASA, Interpol, HS, Homeland Security and all the other members of the Alphabet Gang are all privately owned corporations and none of them or ever has been an agency of United States, Inc. The United States government always held some stock in these corporations but never outright owned or controlled any of them. Their employees receive their paychecks from OPM, which belongs to the IMF, which is the property of the United Nations, which belongs to Israel and the royal and elite class of Europe. All of the alphabet gangs are now the registered property of the United Nations. I sit no under that President Wilson's League of Nations never got off the ground, and that out of 267 nations on the earth only 71 are members of the United Nations. All of this deception is compounded by the refusal of ordinary American story lies, know or understand that it is this secrecy and duplicity of privately owned corporations, being surreptitiously portrayed as American agencies and government, coupled with the deceit and endless greed of Israel, European bankers and the royal and elite families of the world, that have come together to fleece the American people like the sheep the trullery, and unfortunately, America's public apathy and ignorance only servestorine forcefully. This paper hopes to expose many of these secrets of America, but unfortunately not all of them. A reference shave been suggested or referred for you to investigate on your own, if you are so inclined. If you strongly disagree with anything I have written, great, now prove that I am wrong, but be careful how you react, because we patriotic Americans have been taught from an early age to just simply deny without proof anything that contradicts that imaginary template defined as the American way of life. I happen to know that everything that will be discussed herein is factual, and I grant you that these secrets of America will not be easy to digest, because deception never is an easy pill for anyone to swallow. I find yours truly is bliss. You certainly can choose to remain apathetic and ignorant, or you can decide to grow up and begin to digest some hardcore reality. Some of your best friends may be lawyers, judges and politicians, and unfortunately they are all a part of the lie, and they all have sworn an oath to propagate the lie and deny the truth, so yo main todo some soul searching and investigation of your own. It was hard for me to accept too. Those who do not know their past are condemned to repeat it. George Santayana. Offered as a prologue, the most objective and original information I have discovered concerning the origin of an ancient system of crowd and mind control called Babylonian slave driving techniques, and its historic application and effects upon the European and American culture was researched by a group of Asian historians. All of what they discovered is extremely germane in understanding the secrets of America, and this information helps to set the stage for the Great American Adventure. The following is a brief synopsis of their research, which I have condensed, utilizing my knowledge, experience and comprehension of their systematic investigation, and I have included several small details in that synopsis, which I uncovered during my many years of research. I warn you that most Asian people believe in a deep spirituality more so than in religious dogma. Miracles are human gods, and that such Christian beliefs will be treated by them with complete indifference. I apologize now if I tend to repeat myself at times or go off on tangents throughout the body of this paper, but unfortunately I find it most difficult not to, when each timeline event or topic lends itself to further qualitative or quantifiable data. Prologue. At the dawn of human history. At the dawn of human history, some 6,000 years ago, in the ancient city of Babylon, a spurt of great prosperity in agriculture brought about a population boom and the formation of family tribes, which also spirited a frenzy of fights and battles within and between these groups in an effort to establish tribal supremacy. Out of this confusion arose an intelligent and tyrannical individual by the name of Hammurabi. Hammurabi devised a system of mind control, population control and laws of conduct and trade, which was later defined as the Babylonian slave driving techniques. Hammurabi's system of controls was reduced into writing, in which he combined local folk wisdom and prophecy, in an effort to lend to his system more credibility among the tribes, and he included additional propaganda about the existence of an omniscient, omnipresent, almighty God, who saw all things, rewarded all deeds and punished all misconduct. Note: there was another civilization the size of the ancient Roman Empire that existed near the city of Babylon some 2,000 years earlier, which has just recently been discovered by archaeologists, and it would be a reasonable conclusion or assumption that the folk wisdom and prophecy of Babylon was actually derived from this earlier civilization. The continent of Atlantis existed several thousands of years before that, which continued obedied by the royal and elite faction through their slave drivers, paid historians, paid scientists and media representatives. Hammurabi's system of control, conduct, folklore and prophecy preempted the Christian Holy Bible and the general laws of government. His trade laws would eventually become known as the Law of Merchants, which is still used and recognized today internationally as the Uniform Commercial Code. Hammurabi plagiarized the concept and existence of an almighty God, which had been prophesied for many years in folk legend, and he cleverly included himself in these writings as the man named Abraham. Note: as you read on you will see that according to these Asian historians, they have concluded that the Christian Holy Bible was actually compiled by the royal and elite classes to use as a tool to keep them in power and to help them control and drive the ignorant and unwashed masses defined as their slaves. Individuals in Mesopotamia eventually built upon Hammurabi's concept of crowd, mind control, his all-seeing and all-knowing God and the prophecy of Abraham. One of their members, a bearded man with a charismatic persona, appeared out of clean air, sat upon a throne and proclaimed to all of the tribes that his royal status and bloodline was derived from none other than Abraham. There was no way to prove the truth of his statements, and so in order to maintain this belief of his royal status and retain absolute control over the many tribes, a series of great visual aids and displays resembling miracles were engineered. Next, this god-king employed and empowered a special sect of slave drivers to further cement his will and control over the people, which initiated the birth of the Freemasons. 1/10 of the wealth of the tribe's agriculture would be demanded of and surrendered to this god-king as a tax upon his subjects, which he called tithing. Eventually, the combined tribes invaded the pagan empire of Egypt, and the Freemasons added the Egyptian slave-driving techniques to their arsenal of knowledge. The symbol adopted by the Freemasons to identify their special sect was plagiarized from the pagan religion of Egypt, which was the all-seeing eye, encased in the apex of a pyramid, and which was intended to convey to the masses that their duties and authority was superior to them and was derived from the all-seeing and all-knowing Almighty God. Note: this Egyptian pagan symbol of an all-seeing eye at the apex of a pyramid is still used today and appears on the reverse side of the Federal Reserve notes, printed by the Sabbatian Jewish bankers of Israel who own and control the Federal Reserve System in America. The use of this symbol is intended to identify these European bankers as Freemasons and Illuminati members. These slave control techniques created a parallel cultural evolution between the royal and elite ruling class and the ignorant, unwashed masses, by utilizing a combination of knowledge, food and financial restraints, which included a forced superiority over life and death. Any unusually intelligent individuals who discovered or deduced the true nature of this royal and elite movement were either inducted into it, murdered, or their position and influence was neutralized by an assortment of other devious means. The royal and elite ruling class were constantly confronted by numerous rebellions. One such notable rebellion was led by a person named Jesus Christ, and despite the fact that Jesus was eventually executed by the elite class for treason, his radical ideas appealed so deeply to the poor and downtrodden that his rebellion, called Christianity, spread like a wildfire across the land. Note: there were more poor people than the royal and elite class. However, the royal and elite were infinitely superior in intelligence and wealth, and they used their intelligence, wealth and cunning to control the minds and hearts of the unwashed masses they defined as slaves. The same principle is applied in America this date.